For decades, a workforce of seasonal weed trimmers, mostly women, have been cutting and shaping the cannabis bud you see at dispensaries. Each summer, thousands of seasonal workers flock to the Emerald Triangle in Northern California, looking for quick cash in a region that exports millions of pounds of weed every year. But for female workers, this job can be dangerous, exploitative, and degrading. The cannabis trimming industry is a case study on how the history of cannabis labor has been both gendered and discriminatory. My name is Kelly Schirmann. I was born and raised in Humboldt County, California, which is one of the largest cannabis cultivation regions in the United States. I'm a writer and have worked on all sides of the cannabis industry for the past decade, most frequently as a trimmer. Trimming is an often overlooked or virtually unknown part of growing and distributing cannabis, but it's essential to ensuring a grower's product is marketable. In the final stage of cannabis cultivation, the trimmer cuts off extra leaves and plant material from a dried cannabis bud, shaping it into a sellable product. As a weed trimmer, I've worked for up to 16 hours a day during the harvest season, which can run from July to December for a traditional outdoor grow. Because trimmers are generally paid by weight, working long hours might be grueling, but they mean higher payouts at the end of the season. The gender divide in cannabis work is stark. The majority of trimmers I met and worked with were women, and all of the growers I've worked for have been men. Some of this has to do with the nature of the work, but this dynamic is also influenced by cannabis culture itself, which has been historically male-dominated. Because of this divide, cannabis work can create dangerous spaces for female workers. As a trimmer, I've heard horror stories about toxic environments, terrible treatment by growers or male workers, everything from sexual harassment and disparaging comments to sexual abuse, abduction, or worse. Because of the historic culture of secrecy surrounding this industry, the majority of abuse usually goes unreported and unchecked. I once worked on a grow for several weeks without getting paid, which is not uncommon in the underground weed industry. I've also been paid less than what I was owed at the last minute, with no way of defending myself or holding my boss accountable. It's often standard for a grower to hold off paying trimmers until they sell the weed, forcing trimmers to work for free and keep track of their numbers until the product sells. Over the past few years, cannabis legalization has improved safety and workplace standards for trimmers. It's important to remember, though, that while cannabis legalization has passed in California, not all grows there are choosing to operate legally. Of the estimated 10,000 grows in Humboldt County in 2017, only 2,300 of them applied for a permit to grow and sell legally beginning in 2018. It's also important to remember that legalization has decreased wages for growers and workers alike. Cannabis is a billion-dollar industry, and yet the majority of those profits are now trending upward to mostly male business owners and investors. Meanwhile, the majority of labor jobs, even in the legal industry, tend toward a minimum wage model. This exacerbates the gender pay gap, even in a so-called progressive industry. While cannabis has a higher percentage of women in leadership roles than other industries, the margin is only slightly higher than the national average of 23%. What's more troubling is that the number of female cannabis CEOs has fallen dramatically in recent years, from 36% in 2015 to 27% in 2017. Many headlines and business moguls have projected the legal cannabis industry will be an enormous boon to female entrepreneurs, creating opportunities for women to take leadership positions in cannabis companies and close the gender pay gap. But behind the media hype, there's a lot of work to be done. As more states legalize weed, my hope is that all cannabis workers are paid a living wage, not a minimum wage, that the massive profits we're seeing from this industry are shared fairly, and that people, particularly women and girls, know that there are safe options for them to pursue this kind of work.